Okay, welcome back. It is 4/6 of 2015. We're going to continue with the tail end of Jenson's Volume 2 of his Systematic Theology. He's kind of wrapping things up. We're going to look at 332 to 342, where he discusses the metaphor of rapture. And for Jenson, a great deal of the teaching in the New Testament is a parable or metaphor or sign. So he interprets rapture as a metaphor, and we're going to take a look at the three moments. He begins with the advent of Christ as a sign. Currently we live in the realm of the agency of Christ within the church. Therefore the church possesses the Lord as sacramentally as sign. In the second moment, he wants to discuss the text in the book of Acts that talks about the ascension and then the announcement that Christ will return in like manner. And so he wants to look at returning as he departed. That'll be the second moment. The metaphor of rapture actually speaks to the fulfillment of the created will's freedom. It's a modality of unswerving delight. And it becomes concrete as a communal fulfillment of personhood. Now, the eschaton will be an eschaton of a singular community. The divided self no longer will have to battle fragmentation or interdivisions, and it will be a state of a eternally actualized liberation. Liberation as an actuality. The unswerving delight, Jenson says, is based on the remembrance of liberation. And then he introduces the word of antinomy, and he wants to introduce this word because technically, if you break it down, it's a compound word, antinomos. Nomos is law, so it's against law or the antithesis of law. But he applies it to love, and he says that we are liberated for the antinomy of love. It means love as being an antithesis of law-like rigidity. And Jenson describes it as self-sublation. He gives it 5 aspects. After love fulfills an extreme possibility in another, it separates and undoes itself. And in that way, it does not expect a reciprocal response or action. So it is the death of the egoistic love. It is the concept of self-sublation. And that self-sublation prevents the sin of hindering community. So it's very much a sacrificial type of love. Now the singular polity, the singular political realm of the eschaton, makes this antinomy of love an inevitable occurrence. He looks at the metaphor of the lake of fire, and he says it really means that the sin of disrupting community is consigned to the realm of non-being. And likewise, returning in the clouds is a metaphor that means that Christ's sign presence will be transformed into direct apprehending presence. So it simply means that the eschaton will be a time of direct apprehension of the divinity of Christ. It won't be a mediation through sign or a parable. So the return in the clouds is the transformation of sign into presence. He concludes with the irrevocable soteria of community. He wants to emphasize the fact that eschaton is going to be salvation as a perfection of personhood through the communal actuality. It's going to be soteria as communal, as community. So the first attribute he wants to mention is termination. Returning as the departed one will terminate the separation between the church and Israel. It'll be a dismissal of the Gentile generic ungodliness, and likewise a dismissal of Judaic disbelief. And he says that it must include Israel, because Paul reminded us that all of Israel must be irrevocably saved. Now, Israel in the flesh is the contemporary version of Judaism, and it is has a strong emphasis on ancestral relation with Abraham, but the temple worship has been replaced by study of the Torah. Now, finality of Judaic history takes place in the concept of Christ as Son. Christ as Son equals the finality of God's history with His people, and he says there needs to be a repristination of Christology, meaning a refreshing of its originary truth, and that originary truth is that the advent of Christ should be interpreted as the fulfillment of Old Testament covenant. In the eschaton, the Israel and church will become one community in the praise of the Lamb. And again, the Torah is not to be forgotten. The heritage is not to be forgotten. It's to be irrevocably taken up into the soteria of salvation. But the last judgment will create a closure of creation as this new holistic, encompassing, singular community. He talks about final participation because things will change in the eschaton. He says sin, death, and division are going to be consigned to the past, and triune love becomes the answer or the solution for that antinomy of love to take place. And the key for Jenson is that the trimutual identities in that ousia space in the eschaton will take on new relation. The Father will, as rule of exerting power, becomes rule by love. The Son, as agent of eschatological ordering through signs, becomes the Christological direct availability. The Spirit, as the role of gathering communal membership, becomes the infinite play of the possibilities of love within community. And that triune backdrop of distension of the triune deity is going to be a transition from a dialectic of enveloping distension to becoming a fixed form of encompassing liturgy as a perfectly ordered form instead of a form that is dialectically dynamic. It will now become a fixed form of encompassing liturgy. He says that the logic being emphasized here is the logic of deification. It has three moments: the elevation of existence to a higher plane. Fallen, passible humanity evolves to a humanity as true image bearers of God's image. But that image bearing is going to be perfected as communal. Everything here in this lesson is to emphasize the fact that eschaton is communal. Eschaton is always communal. It's never individualistic. It isn't saving of the individual soul. It's the perfecting of personhood through community, through a singular, holistic community that has eliminated divisions and inner fragmentation. So it's a brief lesson, but it gives us a lot of very precise interpretation of looking at a lot of these concepts as metaphors and then discerning the truth from the metaphor and applying it to the eschaton. And so he takes a very unique look at things like the lake of fire, returning in the clouds, or the concept of rapture. They all take on very significant